everybody. It is the third Tuesday of 2025, and what that means for you and I is that we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, www. I knew if I didn't have it written in front of me, I was going to mess it up, and I said, you know what? I can do it without it. No, I can't. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, www.welikesportspc.com proudly presents their tag team champions of the world, the Cleat Geek Mike Valentine, Mitch Moneybags Middlebrooks, and we are the 6, 4, 3, and out guys, and you are listening to the Sportz Truth. How you doing, Mitch?
Good. I like that intro even better the second time.
I don't know. Don't be fumbling stuff like I did. That's my one mess up, and I did it really early in the show, so I got to be perfect now.
Yeah, I got it out of the way at least.
Well, that's true. Maybe we just get it out of the way.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. So, what have you been doing in the last week or so, man? Since we last talked.
Not much. Watching some football. Sadly, I'm trying to get over my loss, but yeah, not much. A lot of playoff football though.
Very true. For those of you who don't know, though, Mitch over here is a Detroit Lions fan. Excuse me. I was afraid I was going to do it. We're going to talk about those Detroit Lions. We're going to talk about lots of stuff. But before we get into it too much, Mitch, you know what we got to do. Fans, you know what we got to do. We got to do the walk-up music.
20 seconds start now. Ten seconds remaining. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
All right, everybody. Already almost to double digits. We're just getting warmed up. Or some of us are just getting messed up, whichever one it is. All right. We got lots of stuff for you today on the third episode of 2025 of the new year. Here we go. We are going to talk about the Ravens and Mark Andrews. We're going to ask, where should Ohio State and Notre Dame be ranked when everything comes out next year? The Toronto Blue Jays, we're going to talk about them for a change. Yeah, they finally got somebody, but the question is, did they overpay? We're going to do an NFL fair statement. We're going to do one of these every week. It'll be a fair statement as to one of these. And now we're going to do it this week on the NFL, and it will focus on the Chiefs and the Patriots. Now that the college football season is done, who's the better conference? The Big Ten or the SEC? We're going to look at the Dodgers and their deferred money. How does it affect Major League Baseball? How does it affect the Dodgers? How does it affect the National League West? Unfortunately for Mitch, we're going to look at a guy named Ben Johnson. He got hired by another team, and we're going to talk about what it means for the new team and his old team. We're going to grade the 12-team college football playoff, and we're going to talk about the salary cap in the NFL and Major League Baseball. All right, Mitch, we are cranking today. Got everything going. Pretty good here, bud. Already got a comment. Hang on, I got to get to that. I got to go over here and click the mouse, and I got all kinds of stuff going on here, buddy. Oh, it's our good buddy, Sir Han. He says, good evening, guys, and good evening to you, sir. Thank you all very much for joining us here on the Sportz Truth. We're going to jump right in with our MLB 4-pitch talk. We're going to do so here pretty quickly with this. This cough is going to be a problem. All right, so in our MLB 4-pitch talk, the 4 things we're going to talk about are the Toronto Blue Jays and their new signing. I'm going to spend a few moments, Mitch and I are here, trying to educate everybody, and we're going to look at how different signings fit in with different teams. We're going to do the Dodgers deferred money, and then the final thing we're going to do here in this first segment, our MLB 4-pitch talk, is we're going to talk about what just happened on the MLB Hall of Fame. All right, excellent. So, Mitch, let's get started with the Toronto Blue Jays, shall we?
Yeah.
So, the Toronto Blue Jays finally did get their guy, but they paid 5 years, $92.5 million. There's a 6th-year option for $15 million. He can opt out at the end of 3, and if Toronto picks up that 6th-year option, then he can't opt out at 3. Kind of a complicated contract as we jump into double digits now. Thank you all very much for tuning in with us. We certainly appreciate that. Mitch over here is shaking that pretty little stash of his, and now I get to ask him a question. He's been very patient with me here. Mitch, did the Blue Jays overpay for Anthony Santander?
You know, I really don't think they did. It's a big contract, but if his production is what it was in 2024, I really don't think they did. They really needed a guy like Santander as well, and I think they're just happy to finally lock somebody up and actually get the guy they wanted. And it seems like they've been missing out on so many guys that they've been going after. And in the final 3, we kind of joked last week, it's like they're always in the final 3, but never the last one, kind of like always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Right.
Well, now they're finally the bride. So, maybe they did overpay slightly. I think it's pretty marginal if they did. So I really I don't have a problem with the signing. I think it's, good for them. They got to spend the money somewhere, and this is finally a guy that they were able to bring to Toronto. So I think if you're a Blue Jays fan, you're happy with it.
Well, let me give you some positives, and then let me give you some negatives, and then I'll ask you the exact same question again. Did they overpay for him, right? So on the positive front, he had 44 home runs last year. So that's his 3rd year in a row with at least 28 home runs. In the last 3 seasons, he is WRC plus, which is weighted runs created plus. We may have to get into some of these terms before it's all said and done and talk about some of these terms that we love to throw out here. So the average is 100. So his weighted runs created plus was 124. But on the downside, right, he doesn't run. His outfield defense is below average. He is a career -3 defensive runs saved. And his outs above average for his career are -13. Some 2 big negatives, and I'm not sure if the positives outweigh it. So I'll ask you again. $92.5 million for 5 years. Did Toronto overpay for Anthony Santander?
I still don't think they did because they can use him as a DH. It's going to be hard for him to play out there in that big outfield in Toronto, definitely. But, if they can kind of slot him in at DH, they've still got Dalton Varsho, who's a great outfielder, who can maybe kind of help cover up some of those holes for him too. And like I said, if he gives you the production that he did last season, they're going to be really happy with this signing. Now, can he hit 44 home runs? Can he hit 40 home runs again? We'll see. I'll tell you what, that left field fence in Baltimore, getting rid of that is going to help him. So, you know, I could see him getting around that production again, and I think if he does, he's worth it. I think contracts right now in Major League Baseball and in any professional sport are really hard to tell. Like, okay, where is the market? You know, did they give him a substantially bigger offer than anybody else was offering him? And we don't really know. So it's hard to say if they overpaid. They might have just a little bit. But again, if I'm a fan of the Blue Jays, you finally got somebody, and I think you're just kind of happy, you know, either way, even if you did overpay by 2 or 3, 4 million a year.
Now I could see this move. Excuse me. If they were then going to go out and sign another bat, right? And I think everybody is looking at Pete Alonso. Well, the problem with Pete Alonso is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So you're going to have, if they do that, you can't play all three of them at once. That's the thing, right? You can't, you're going to have to DH one of them and play one of them, or at first, or DH. I guess you can play all three of them at once. I guess you could, like, DH Alonso, play Guerrero at first, and then play Santander in the outfield. I don't know if you want to do that or not. Santander in the outfield, just I don't know if that's going to work for Toronto or not. So I would be okay with this if they were going to sign another bat, but I don't know what other bat is out there besides Pete Alonso that's really going to make a big difference. So what do you think about them possibly signing Pete Alonso as that's kind of rumored right now?
Yeah, I'm with you there. They definitely don't want to have to play all three of those guys every day if they do end up going out and getting Polar Bear there. I think, and it's not because you don't want to switch off between even DHing Pete and Vlad Guerrero Jr. It's like you don't want Santander to be an everyday outfielder. And that's really what you're trying to avoid there. I think, they'd actually probably like being able to switch out their first baseman, kind of give them that like rest day without really being a rest day when you get the DH slot instead of playing the field. But I don't think they want to do that. I know with Vlad Guerrero, he's going to be a free agent after this season. It'll be interesting to see, if they do go after Pete Alonso, what that means for Vlad Guerrero Jr. I think it would probably mean that they're, expecting to lose him. I can't expect them to make a huge push for Pete Alonso, and in the back of their head not think that they're going to end up losing Guerrero. But it'd be interesting to see how they could kind of finagle that, and if they could make it work. I mean, they've got the money, they can spend it. They haven't been able to spend it elsewhere this off season, but yeah, it'd be interesting to put it all on the field together for sure.
Right. So I want to take this example, Mitch, and I want to explain to our viewers at home and those fantastic people who are listening to us right now, all three of them. No, I'm just kidding. We got more than that. How the free agents kind of fit in on a team, right? Because I think a lot of times we just see a free agent and we're like, oh, they need to go out and get the best hitter. They need to go out and they need to get the best second baseman. They need to go out and and we think of a team as plugging holes. And if you think of a team as plugging holes, then what the Blue Jays just did by signing Santander plugs a huge hole for them. Let me explain. And these are the numbers that if you are a good team with good analytical people, these numbers. And I know you know them because I put them on this pretty little paper for us that's right here beside of me and sent it to you. So just help me out here and let's see how all this fits in. Let's talk about it with you and let's talk about it with our fans. And what I mean by that is, ladies and gentlemen, you can click on that little comment button and type away, and then we'll put you down here at the bottom. So without further ado, let's talk about this for a moment. How free agents fit on a team. So only the Marlins, the Rays, the Nationals, and the White Sox hit fewer home runs last year than the Toronto Blue Jays. They hit 156. Santander is a switch hitter as well. So Guerrero, Bichette, Springer, and Kirk are all right-handed bats. Santander can come in there and give you that left-handed bat. Plus, as a whole, the Blue Jays lead MLB with 102 defensive runs saved. So if Santander does give you a little bit less on the defensive side, and you already lead baseball, then you can afford to give away a little bit of that if you lead baseball. So they're 26 outs above average for fourth. And I think as a whole, Mitch, Santander checks off several boxes for the Toronto Blue Jays, even if they did overpay for him. What do you think about all that?
No, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, those are kind of it's the biggest hole on offense that they have. No left-handed bat, not even considering the power. But out of their guys that are going to scare you in the lineup, they're all right-handers.
Right.
And, you can argue how scary Springer and Kirk are. But still, those are the guys that, in that lineup, you're going to try to avoid and not get them to beat you. They're all right-handed guys, so the game plan going in, you don't have to really consider like, well, do I throw this guy this inning and then make a change? If I'm playing the matchups, all you have to worry about is the problem is, I guess the benefit for them is exactly like you mentioned. They had the most defensive runs saved throughout entire Major League Baseball. So They can give up some of that if they do want to play him every day in the outfield, and still be, probably top 5 even in that category. And it solves their problem of power. So yeah, I think he fits perfectly. I think it's actually a really good signing, and yeah, I agree to your point. I think that's why, even if you are overpaying a little bit, when it's the perfect fit for your offense and your team, you can, kind of justify overpaying a little bit like they have.
All right. So, again, the points that I brought up, obviously I agree with them or I wouldn't have brought them up, right? So, and I appreciate your insight on everything. Now, what they did, and this is going to be an interesting piece here. I want to see who's going to pick this guy up. I put this on our notes as well. Brandon Eisert, I believe is how you say his name. Eisert was the guy who they DFA'd or wow. Heck is DFA stand for? What is it?
Santander.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, so they DFA'd him to make room for Santander, yeah.
Yeah.
Designated for assignment. That was what I was trying to remember. I'm shorthanding everything on my notes over here. So to make room for him, right? He's a lefty, 28.6% K rate. He has league average in walks and league average in ground balls, and he's a left-hander. So he will get another shot somewhere, and I'll be interesting to see where he will get that second shot at. And then as far as the Blue Jays as a whole, right, we've kind of been saying throughout this whole offseason, like you said earlier, they were always the bridesmaid and never the bride, right? Well, they have signed Jeff Hoffman. They've signed Yimi Garcia. And they're now showing interest in Max Scherzer from everything that I'm reading. So if they can get Scherzer and they've got all these other guys, I don't think the Blue Jays have had a bad offseason whatsoever. If they can get Max Scherzer and he can be, I don't want to say the Max Scherzer of old, but let's say he gets some 13 to 15 wins. What do you think about the Blue Jays as a whole in this offseason with the moves that they've made?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if Scherzer can be that guy anymore. I think he's kind of lost a step, but I do think that, if they get Scherzer, I just think Scherzer is going to come with too big of a price tag for what he's going to give any team. So I don't know if I'm ready to say that would, really kind of secure a good offseason for him. I will say they haven't done terrible this offseason. I'd give them around like a C plus for their offseason right now. I think if they get another arm and maybe another bat, depending on who they go after, they could sneak up into that B plus range even. But I think the tough part is, they took a risk on Jeff Hoffman. Who knows how that's going to go for them?
Right. We did that last week in a pretty in-depth discussion. For those of you who didn't watch last week, go back to our last episode. You can see it on our YouTube channel. Mitch, what is that, buddy?
Yep, you'll find us at the 643 and Out Pod on YouTube.
All right.
You can find us there where we talked about Jeff Hoffman, and I think we both agreed that they took a risk, but they got kind of a bargain on him if everything works out the way they want it to. So if it works out with Jeff Hoffman, if Santander can be what he was last season for him, we're going to be looking at this offseason as a huge win, actually. But those are a lot of question marks, especially with Jeff Hoffman. You just don't know how that shoulder is going to hold up. But if they take another risk, and if they, maybe stretch and overpay for Scherzer a little bit, and all three of those things go wrong, it's going to be really bad for the Blue Jays. And they're going to look back on this offseason and be a lot more harsh than we are right now.
Yes, I agree. So, they've taken a chance, but when you're always the bridesmaid and never the bride, you kind of have to take a chance, right?
Yep, exactly.
All right. So we've talked about the Blue Jays enough. That's probably the most we've ever talked about the Blue Jays in one segment and in our entire existence here. So let's go to the Dodgers for a moment. The Dodgers all of a sudden are doing this tons and tons of deferred money. Let me give you the figures here, okay? So they signed Tanner Scott. Now, they also signed Kirby Yates today. I don't know if that adds to this or not because I haven't actually seen the contract yet. So as far as deferred money goes, on the Dodgers' active 2025 roster, you've got $21 million to Tanner Scott. You've got $23.5 million to Teoscar Hernandez. You have $25 million to Tommy Edman. You have $50 million to Will Smith. I'm not near done yet. You have $57 million to Freddie Freeman. You have $66 million to Blake Snell. You have $115 million to Mookie Betts. And, of course, you have $680 million to some guy named Shohei Ohtani. And if you add all that up, it is $1.37 billion. Yes, that's right. Billion with a B. Not million, billion. But here's my question for you, Mitch. Are these contracts going to catch up to the Dodgers eventually?
Yeah. Yep, they definitely are, and they know they are. The Dodgers right now are just taking advantage of the CBA and what they can do right now. They know they're going to catch up to them. They are hoping that eventually down the line they'll find a way to make up for it or get out of it, or maybe after winning 10 World Series in a row, they get so much money and so much postseason revenue that they can pay all these and not even notice a dent in the checkbook. But yeah, they'll definitely catch up to them. I mean, you don't defer all this money and not, have some unintended consequences down the line. Maybe we don't even know them yet. Maybe we can't predict them right now. But yeah, I don't see this going exactly the way the Dodgers are hoping with all of this deferred money.
Right. It's not like they have just a small amount. I mean, 1.3 billion is an absolute ton. So
yeah, even for the Dodgers, that's a lot.
Right. Even for the Dodgers, that's a lot. So I also want to ask you this. Should MLB restrict the number of deferred dollars that one team can have per season? What do you think about that?
Yes, I think 100%. The Dodgers have definitely exposed kind of a workaround. I won't say a loophole because any team can do it, and it wasn't too hard to figure out. But they've definitely exposed something that needs to be recognized in the next collective bargaining agreement, which, by the way, is up after this season. So if I honestly, I don't want to get pessimistic or cynical, but I do think this is going to be the longest lockout that we've ever had in Major League Baseball because of the things that need to be done with this collective bargaining agreement. And I think because of the Dodgers, this is going to be one of the biggest things is getting rid of this insane amount of deferred money so that teams can't do this and then, kind of just keep shipping it down the line. I hope that's not the case, but I do think that a lot of people are going to put their foot down and say like, hey, we can't just keep doing this. And the Dodgers can't, get every single free agent out there and convince them to defer half their money. And then, I'm sure they're selling them some kind of, well, we can help you being in LA. We can help you get these sponsorships and, you'll be in the Dodgers so you can get this publicity and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure they're feeding them these things in their little ear somehow to get them to agree to all this deferred money. And there has to be a way to check that. Not saying they can't defer any, but yeah, the amount that they are, it definitely has to be in check, in my opinion.
Right, I 100% agree, and it's not just for the Dodgers. It needs to be it needs to be a number. You can't have more than 50 million or whatever it's going to be
Yep.
for every team, not just for the Dodgers, for every team, because I think that it really gives teams a big advantage when you've got all of this money. So not only can you pay people up front, but now all of a sudden you can pay people in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a double whammy, and I think Major League Baseball is going to have to do something about it in order to fix it. Now, a lot of our fans either didn't see it or didn't really agree with us because we didn't have too much action on this. I did make it a poll question, and I'm not even going to read it because I think only like a handful of people even voted on it. And I don't know. It was the first one that I put out there, and I thought it would do better than that. But every once in a while, I'm wrong. Or if you ask my wife, she says all the time. So, all right, buddy. Let's jump into MLB Hall of Fame for a moment. Of course, Ichiro, CC Sabathia, Billy Wagner, all three made it. Do you think all three of them deserve to be in the MLB Hall of Fame?
100%. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I was glad to see Billy Wagner finally made it. Probably 5 years too long for him, but he made it in by the skin of his teeth. So yeah, I was happy for all of them. I think all three of those guys are very deserving. I won't say I was surprised, but I was glad to see that CC made it first ballot too. He's done a lot for the game, especially after he's been really open about his struggles with addiction and alcoholism while he is in the game. So I thought it was a really cool thing to see that he was able to make it in first ballot. So good for him.
Well, that kind of brings up an interesting point to me, and I wasn't necessarily prepared to talk about it, but you brought it up here, so let's go through this for a second. If you do stuff off the field, not just on the field, should that count as you going into the Hall of Fame?
No, I don't think so. I think that just makes him more likable, and I don't think that should be, a factor for making it or being first ballot, whatever it is. I think he's just become an easy guy to root for, and he may not have always been that. Being a Yankee and a Cleveland Indian for so long, he's been easy for me to root for because he gave me really the greatest second half of a Brewers baseball season that I've ever seen, and that really kick-started my love for baseball, and it came at a perfect time when I was right at that age where I could finally watch the games by myself and really start getting into everything. So he's always easy for me to love, but I think for a lot of people, just making himself human was, something that people can root for and kind of see themselves in or see someone they know in. So that's why I was happy to see it. But no, I don't think it should make a difference, if that's what's going to push you over the line for a Hall of Famer or not. I wouldn't agree with that.
But it does. I mean, if you do charitable work and if a lot of the things that he has done, I will 100% agree with you. It has made him more likable. I didn't think about that as far as and you and I talk about this a lot, not necessarily on this show, but we communicate a lot when we go to games and stuff like that together. I don't think athletes realize how impressionable people who follow them are and what kind of a moment they can make. Like, I think that was a pretty neat story where you were like, hey, he really got me to watch the Milwaukee Brewers, and all he did was pitch for one half of one season. And that turned you around and got you to watch that particular team. I don't think athletes sometimes realize how much of an influence they can be on us as far as fans goes. That's a pretty neat story. I got another question.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it doesn't hurt that he ended a 26-year playoff drought and pitched 17 games and the 7 complete games, 3 shutouts. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that he helped them so much, or it doesn't hurt that he helped them so much, and that he's talked so fondly of his time in Milwaukee. But yeah, I think those are the kind of things like you said that really make sports so emotional for people, and that make them remember and stick with these teams, because that's the stuff that really matters.
Right, and you're also going to talk about another person who was pretty influential with you here in just a little bit. I know you've got something prepared for in the memory of Bob Uecker, and we'll certainly do that here towards the end of the program. I can't wait to hear what you're going to do with that. And I think a lot of our fans are going to be very appreciative of what you're going to do with that statement. So Ichiro missed being an overwhelming guy, right? 100% guy. He missed it by 1 vote. Are we ever going to know who that person is?
He better hope we don't. They better hope we don't. Whoever it is, because I think they're gonna get a few flaming bags on their front porch if they do ever find out who that is. Because I really expected Ichiro to be a unanimous Hall of Famer. I mean, I don't understand it. I don't understand how you look at Ichiro, whether you watched him play or you looked at his numbers, and you don't see that as a Hall of Famer. I think that person probably has a Hall of Fame of 4 or 5 people, if Ichiro isn't in there. So that was surprising to me. I don't think we'll ever find out who it was.
But they could do this a different way, right? So let's say I've got 11 people that I want to vote for on a 10-person ballot, and I know that Ichiro is going to get in. So isn't that the guy that I wouldn't vote for in order for me to vote for the other 10?
That's a good point. Yeah, I actually didn't think of it like that. I like that. From the ballots I've seen, I don't know if many people or if any people were actually filling all 10 and using all 10 of their votes. But yeah, that's I think the only acceptable reason that you would leave Ichiro off there.
All right. I just want to throw that out there because I've got a lot of people on that ballot. I don't hold people in huge regard. I know you kind of hold these guys in a, I don't want to say more of a regard, but you've said many times on this show it's the hall of, it's not the hall of very good, right? It's the hall of great, and that's why they make them do the 75%. So I don't know if I like the 75% rule. That's something we can debate at another time. I'm pretty sure that you like the 75% rule so that it only puts in the best of the best. But I think there's some other people who may be deserving out there as well. And let's talk about that.
We just have to get better are I'm fine with the 75. I think the voters are are just writers. They get egotistical and cynical and jealous. So I think we just have to get better voters. Is really what it is.
Wait a minute. Was that a backhanded stab? Was that what that was?
No. I mean it.
I mean, I write for a WWE.
No, I mean it. I mean these
PC.com, right?
Well, yeah, that's different. I mean these MLB, NBA, these guys that have to fit these narratives, and it's kind of like the NBA MVP. They pick who they want before the season, and then they fit their narrative, and they win the MVP no matter what, as long as the numbers are close. And that's kind of how I see Major League Baseball voters right now. They it seems like they have some like personal vendettas or like get like too in their own head about, well, my vote, I get to pick what I want with my vote, and the logic kind of goes out the window. I'll spare their names, but I've seen a few, Joel Sherman, that they just don't make any sense. It doesn't. So
Shots fired.
Yeah, those kind of guys. We just got to get better voters. But yeah, Mike, I'm making the case for you to get a vote. That's right.
Oh, is that what it is? You're making the case for me to get a vote?
Yeah, you'd be a better voter than half those guys. I'll tell you that.
Oh, that's funny. And then he comes back with this as well. So
yeah.
It's an interesting thing. And Curious Sports Pulse Media here is he was on with me with the Sports Rant a couple weeks ago. If you get a chance to check that out, you can go over to their YouTube page, Sports Rant. And there was a show that myself, and we'll just call him Curious for the time being, or maybe we'll call him Pulse. I like Pulse. We'll do it that way. Thanks for jumping in and putting your comments up. The rest of you can do that as well. Keep these things going. We love to have interaction from our fans. That's the whole reason we do this for. Obviously, we're not getting paid and we're not sponsored or anything. So, we're not doing it for that. So we're doing it for you guys. Let's move on with the Hall of Fame stuff here for a second. I want to know which of these three, Mitch, is the biggest surprise to you. So would it be Carlos Beltran missing the Hall of Fame by 19 votes? Would it be Chase Utley jumping 11% in his quest to be a Hall of Famer? Or would it be Andy Pettitte still way down at the bottom at only 27.9%? Which one of those three surprised you most?
Yeah, honestly, they were all pretty shocking to me. I think I'm fine with where Carlos Beltran is at, but I understand that a lot of people weren't, and they were shocked by that. I'd say Chase Utley was the biggest surprise for me. He grew a lot more this year than I thought he would in the vote getting. I know it's his second year on the ballot. Yeah, but I didn't expect this big of a jump. I don't really get it. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. And so that's kind of surprising to me. I figured he would kind of stay around where he was last season or last year. I don't think he's going to keep going up very much. And if he does, he'll probably level out pretty quickly. But he just, I don't know. That was a shock to me because I don't really understand it. He's not going to get it. And so it seems like kind of a waste of a vote for me.
And to be honest with you, Chase Utley's kind of on that fringe, right? At least for me. And not as far as the Hall of Fame goes. But he was on that fringe of, he was still playing when we allowed you to do takeout slides and stuff like that. Yet towards the end of his career, and, I'm sure that if you, look him up on YouTube a couple times, Young Trunks, you'll be able to find some pretty good takeout plays at second base from Chase Utley. And baseball used to not blink. They would just let you run over the second baseman. And, Chase Utley was playing like that in the beginning of his career. And then towards the end of his career, we were like, whoa, wait a minute. let's not ruin people's careers by taking them out at second base. So let's change the rules some. And I think Chase Utley kind of got caught in being called a dirty player because of that. What do you think about Chase Utley and his reputation in Major League Baseball? And will that keep him out of the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think, being in Major League Baseball for 15 seasons, 16 seasons, he was kind of the end of that, kind of breaking up the double plays. I think, his slide on Miguel Tejada is probably one of the last that we've really seen like that. And we see it all the time because it did cause a serious injury that ended up ending Tejada's career. So I understand it. I don't think he's a dirty player. I think, when he came into the league, everybody was doing it. There wasn't rules against doing it when he was in the league. And so he was doing what he could to help his team win. I don't think that's dirty. I think, a lot of people at the time weren't doing it because they didn't feel it was right, and that's their right to do that. But I don't think, when you've played the game for 15 years one way, and they say, hey, there's not this rule, but people are going to think you're a dirty player if you do this, that's not going to be enough to stop you. If there's no rule preventing it, and that's what you think is going to help your team win, you're going to do it. And I don't really think that's dirty. I think he does kind of get a bad rap for that. But yeah, I'm with you.
All right. So the last thing on the Hall of Fame, and then I didn't tell you that I've got this little nugget, but I'm gonna combine baseball and the presidential inauguration. I'll give it to you in a second. I don't know if you saw it on our timeline or not, but I put it up on our Twitter feed. I think it's pretty interesting. So the last thing on the Hall of Fame here, real fast, to stay on the ballot from one year to the next, you need 5%. And there were several people this year who did not get 5%. In fact, there were 3 people who didn't even get a single vote. And we'll get to that here in just a second. But I want to talk to you about, I want to see if you agree if any of these people should at least be on the ballot next season, or should at least have gotten the 5% to keep them on the ballot. Now, I remember when Kenny Lofton a few years ago didn't get the 5%, and I was pretty upset about that. I mean, he changed the game. His speed and things changed the game, and I really thought that maybe he wasn't a Hall of Famer, but I thought we did him a disrespect by not allowing him to continue to be on the Hall of Fame ballot. I want to see if any of these people catch your mind as well. First one I got here, actually, I'm going to bring him first because as some of you know out there, I'm a first responder. I'm a corrections officer, and believe it or not, this baseball player's father works for the same company that I do. So he works for the Department of Corrections as well, and that gentleman's name is Ian Kinsler. So you got Ian Kinsler, Russell Martin, Brian McCann, Troy Tulowitzki, Curtis Granderson, Adam Jones, and Carlos Gonzalez. All of those guys are not going to be on the Hall of Fame ballot next year because they didn't get that 5% that they need. Are you upset at any of these people who didn't get the 5% and you think they should have?
Yeah. Honestly, I think, I didn't expect any of these guys to actually make it. But I kind of expected them to be over 5%. I think it's kind of shocking to me. I think the biggest surprise, honestly, would be Russell Martin and Fernando Rodney. I know Dustin Pedroia probably didn't play long enough, or he actually hit over the 5%, so I don't include him. But, yeah. But yeah, a lot of these guys surprised me, actually. Ben Zobrist was, he got a lot of buzz around his name because of what he did in the postseason, but overall not a Hall of Famer. So I understand it. I don't think any of these guys would be Hall of Famers, but I'm surprised that, the ones that got no votes were a little surprising to me even.
Right, and those 3 people, just so everybody knows and is following along with us, like you've already mentioned 2 of them. Ben Zobrist got no votes whatsoever. Fernando Rodney got no votes whatsoever. And the one that really and honestly surprised me who got no votes, was Hanley Ramirez.
Yep.
Uh, got none.
Yep.
Not that he didn't get 5%, he got no votes. None of those 3 guys did.
Yeah.
A little bit shocking to me. A little bit shocking to me. Okay, let me because we're 45 minutes in and we haven't gotten past the first segment yet. So let me give you these real quick. Most home runs under each president will be interesting. And if you want to get to this list and you want to share it with some of your friends, and as you're talking at work tomorrow and you want to seem all smart, all you got to do is go over to our X page, which is at the643 and out pod, and you can get this list from Jeremy Frank. I retweeted it out there. Jeremy Frank does at MLB Random Stats. So at MLB Random Stats, and you can get that I'm going to give you right now. In the Eisenhower era, Mr. Matthews hit 313 home runs. While Kennedy was in office, Harmon Killebrew hit 139. While Lyndon B. Johnson was in office, Willie Mays hit 181. All these guys, the guy who hit the most home runs during that presidential period. Nixon, he might not have been a crook, but not too many people could steal the ball over the fence from Hank Aaron because he hit 218 of them. While Ford was president, the only one that's not in triple digits, Mike Schmidt, 87 home runs while Ford was president. While Carter was president, just to show you how dominant Mike Schmidt was, he got that one too. 152 home runs while Jimmy Carter was president, 87 home runs while Ford was president. And believe it or not, while Ronald Reagan was president, the guy that got 259 home runs, that was Mike Schmidt too. While Bush was president, McGriff, the crime dog, hit 137. While Clinton was president, some guy named Ken Griffey Jr. hit 351 of them. While the younger Bush was president, Alex Rodriguez hit 364. Obama's tenure, Albert Pujols was the number 1 guy, 272. During Trump's first spot, this one surprised me a little. I was trying to go through and figure this out. Mike Trout hit 134 home runs and was number 1. And in the Biden administration, no real surprise here, with 196 home runs, he had some guy named Aaron Judge. So I wanted to combine the president stuff and Major League Baseball into one spot there. And seeing how all that was put together, we got one more comment. Let's throw it up here. I like Seaman Smart. So this is a big help, actually. MLB Random Stat, it is. I like that. All right. To keep adding people, thank you guys for jumping on in with us. We are now going to jump from MLB 4-pitch talk to our NFL 4-down territory. All right. So MLB 4-down territory. We're going to talk about the Ravens and Mark Andrews. And the second thing we're going to talk about is we're going to make Mitch cry and talk about Ben Johnson and Detroit and how that all pans out. We're going to go and talk about a fair statement. I think this will be a good one. We'll dive deep into that. And then at the end, we're going to talk about is the salary cap working in the NFL? And then we're going to kind of put that with Major League Baseball as well. Should be interesting. 4-pitch talk. Here we go. All right. So, Mitch, we're getting everything put together here. I don't have a technical person or any of this stuff, so I got to be punching buttons here and doing stuff over there and all that. So let's talk about Mark Andrews first, Mitch. Mark Andrews is the tight end for the Ravens. He fumbled and he dropped a game-tying 2-point conversion in their loss to Buffalo. Then he didn't talk to the media after the game, and he was unavailable on Monday when they're supposed to do the quote-unquote locker room media session. So which one of those two was worse? The fact that he had the fumble and he dropped the 2-point conversion, or the fact that he wouldn't talk to the media afterwards?
Definitely what he did on the field. I think he really could have used this. I'll give you a napkin, Mark, and you can get that butter off your fingers.
Mm, I thought
Man,
you
that
said
was
tears
that.
off his face.
Yeah, that too. Because those are flying. You could tell he was really shaken up about it and felt really bad. Um, it's tough. I mean, the ball was in his hands for that 2-point conversion. And who knows what would have happened. There's a lot of time on the clock. So, for all we know, Buffalo goes down and kicks a field goal, scores a touchdown, game over either way. But, for the Ravens to come back like that and have a chance to tie the game, the ball in his hands, it's slippery, sure. Their other tight end, Isaiah Likely, just caught a 35-yard touchdown the play before that. So I really don't know if you can excuse, it's wet and slippery out there, the ball, when the other tight end, who's a lot younger and a lot more athletic at this point in his career, just caught a huge touchdown pass late in the game. So I think that's the biggest thing is Mark Andrews, has been this sure-handed guy, somebody that the Ravens have relied on for a long time now, and to come up short in not only the 2-point conversion spot, but the fumble with 5 minutes left in the game, when all he had to do was get upfield. He tries cutting back and making a big play when his legs aren't under him anymore, anyways, and ends up fumbling. So bad look, bad couple plays for Mark Andrews. It's a shame, and it potentially cost his team a win. So I think that's the bigger issue of the two for sure.
Yeah, but he wasn't the only one. I mean, it's not like he was the only person, wearing a purple uniform that made any kind of mistakes. I mean, Lamar threw 2 interceptions. There were some coaching decisions in there that I wasn't real sure about as the game was unfolding live. So I don't want to put it all on Mark Andrews. I just think because they came back there towards the end and it's like, oh, they're going to do it. Oh, they're going to tie it. We're going to get to see, I almost said extra innings like it's baseball. We're going to get to see overtime, So I think that exasperated everything. But he by far was the only person that made any mistakes on that football field. But I don't like not owning up to it, right? Okay, you make a mistake, you get behind a podium and you say, hey, yeah, I messed this up. I tell people, at my work all the time, where, I know you supervise people, so do I. And I just tell them, tell the truth, right? Even if I'm not going to like the answer, just tell me the truth.
Yep.
Get up there behind the podium and say, hey, look, wasn't my best game. But again, Mark Andrews hadn't dropped a pass since week 6.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I agree. Own up to it. At least be able to, speak for yourself afterwards. And say like, hey, yeah, this is on me. I didn't come up in those big spots when my team needed me. Definitely wasn't all on him. Lamar kind of owned up to that, and I actually appreciated that from Lamar. He said, they never should have been in that situation. If he didn't fumble, and if he didn't throw those interceptions, they probably aren't in that situation. So I respect Lamar for taking that on the chin and kind of wearing that for his team, even though Andrews was definitely putting it on himself too. But yeah, I don't like skirting the responsibility, hiding away in the corner because you don't want the media to make you feel bad. You got to own it if you do some stuff like that.
Right. So you talked about Lamar a little bit. Now, Lamar doesn't do well in the playoffs. Lamar doesn't seem to do well in big game situations. So that leads me to ask you this question. It's a pretty simple one. Is Lamar Jackson still, or was he ever in your mind, the NFL MVP?
Yeah, no, he wasn't. To be honest, it's been Josh Allen for me all season pretty much, or at least the later half of the season when you can really tell who's put together a whole complete season. It's been Josh Allen for me. I get Lamar, but I don't think it's close. I think what Josh Allen has done with that team and that wide receiving core of absolute nobodies in Buffalo, I really think it's Josh Allen by far in the MVP race.
Okay. So Lamar's never been your MVP then.
No, and I think even now, it was clear who was the MVP in that game too. Ravens offense played well, but like you said, they always seem to fall short in these big playoff games.
Okay, so let's move on to the coaching situation here for a second. I want to talk about this. We're going to talk about this coaching thing a little extensive here, and I think we're going to have a good time doing it, and hopefully our fans will believe so. Maybe they even put some comments up for us here. So as we get going in our NFL 4-pitch talk, here's the second part of number 4. Ben Johnson is going to be the next coach of the Chicago Bears. So the first question for you, Mitch, pretty simple one. Is this the right move for the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, the Bears hit a home run with this one. They finally got a coach that seems like the right fit for them. They want somebody that can help Caleb Williams ease into the NFL, and that's kind of hopefully what they got for Ben Johnson. That's at least their hope. An offensive-minded guy who can draw up anything that you can dream of on a football field. And that's kind of what Caleb Williams needs. They need to get creative. They need to figure out how to get the most out of Caleb Williams, especially with that poor offensive line. The more, I won't say gimmicks, but the more kind of trickery they can implement in their game, it's going to help Caleb Williams kind of take some of that pressure off him.
Okay. So I would agree with you. Well, you know what? No, I'm not. I still think, and I barked about it for the last couple of weeks. I still think they should have brought in the Notre Dame head football coach, and that should have been their guy. Now, I'm not upset with the Ben Johnson hire, but I just don't think, for me, he'd have been 1B, not 1A. So let's flip it the other way and ask this: was this the right move for Ben Johnson? He could have had the Raiders job, he could have had the Jaguars job, but yet he chose the Chicago Bears. So was the Chicago Bears the right job for Ben Johnson?
I actually think it is. And I think because right now, the way the rosters sit, the Bears have the best roster of those 3 teams, and they have the most dynamic quarterback of those 3 teams. Now, who knows what the Raiders do, and who knows how things shake out when we begin next season. But as it sits right now, the Bears have the best offensive fit for Ben Johnson to implement what he wants to implement. And so I think it is a good fit for him. To be honest, there's too many question marks to know if he's going to be successful there. But I think overall, you can control and do what you can. I think this is the best fit considering everything that goes into being successful in the National Football League.
I mean, I think we've talked about this ad nauseum a little bit, so I don't want to dwell on it too much. But it's a quarterback-driven league. Trevor Lawrence is at least an above-average quarterback, and you've already got him in Jacksonville. So I would have been tempted maybe to take that particular job. But I will say this: the Chicago Bears have a lot of money on the cap space in the coming year. They still got a high draft pick. They have a new stadium coming. So, I think all of these things kind of point towards, yes, this was the right move for Ben Johnson. And I believe it was also the right move for the Raiders. Now, I have an interesting question for you here. And, you being the Detroit guy, I'm going to be curious to hear your answer on this one. And that is, there's no doubt, none of us who are watching this program right now have any doubt who the leader of the Detroit Lions was. and is. And it's not Ben Johnson, right? It is some guy named Dan Campbell. And he proves it all the time on the sidelines, behind the podium, everywhere he goes. He is the guy. So if he is the leader of the Lions, and the Chicago Bears said they wanted a quote unquote, here we go, we're going to use a little air quotes here. They wanted a leader of men. How do we know if Ben Johnson's really a leader of men when Dan Campbell's been the one leading everything up to this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's kind of what I'm alluded to with the question marks. That's the biggest question mark for Ben Johnson right now. It's not the X's and O's. We know he knows how to, be an offensive coordinator, probably be the best offensive coordinator in the league. It's can he lead a group of men effectively and make everyone believe that they can win? Because that's really the hardest challenge of taking over the Chicago Bears right now. It's not getting people to play right on the field. They're all professional athletes. They all know what their job is on the field. Now that offensive line, that's a different story. Everybody else on that field, all the skill players on the Chicago Bears, they all know how to play their position and play at the highest level. It's really about building a team, building the characteristics of winners on a team. And that's what's really the biggest question mark for Ben Johnson right now. I don't think we know that. I don't think we will know that until late into his first season as a head coach to really know what kind of leader he is.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because when you've got such a strong personality like Dan Campbell, you just kind of sit back and let him lead, right? And you not necessarily follow, but you're not going to do anything to trump his leadership anyway. So it will be interesting to see if he's going to be able to do that. Now, you're probably going to notice, ladies and gentlemen, that on today's show of the Sportz Truth, we're not going to do a whole lot of money bag stuff over there with Mitch. But I tell you what we are going to do. We talked about it a little bit before the show. Wait till next week. We're going to have some really interesting baseball stuff on some money lines and things like that Mitch is getting prepared for us. So starting next week, even though spring training is like 31 days away or 21 days away, something like that, it's getting close enough where I'm going through my cards for my autographs. I'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't wait for it all to start. And I can't wait till next week when we start doing some different lines on some different baseball things that I think a lot of you guys will be able to take advantage of before the season even starts. We're going to make you some money this year on MLB. And Mitch Moneybags Middlebrooks is going to do it for you, buddy. Where can they get you at on Twitter?
Yeah, you'll find me at Mitchellbrook52. I'll be posting all of our, bets that we hand out as well after the shows there. So we'll start doing that next week. Yeah, keep an eye out. We'll give you some future bets to place on the whole Major League Baseball season, which kind of helps. It's really fun to make those season-long bets because they're never dead until game 162 because you never know what's going to happen.
Right. So you're saying there's a chance, right?
Yeah.
All right, buddy. So now, do you think that not only are the Detroit Lions going to lose Ben Johnson, are they going to lose their defensive coordinator as well?
He might have played himself out of a job or coached himself out of a job in the playoffs. Just a really, really poor defensive game plan for Aaron Glenn against the Commanders. Didn't have anything to show. Unwilling to adjust and correct the wrongs and the mistakes that we've seen all season. Just too reliant on man defense, unwilling to play the zone, unwilling or unable to play the zone, whatever it is. I think it kind of screams incompetence at times when you're completely unwilling to waver from what you've done all season. So I'm not sure if they'll lose Aaron Glenn, but some teams might be either desperate enough or delusional enough to take a shot at him.
All right. We're going to get to one here in just a moment. We're going to look at a fair statement. We're going to start doing these every week. We're going to do fair statement. Today it will be on the NFL, and that will be the next topic of conversation here. But right at the moment, so let's assume that you're going to keep your defensive coordinator, and you're only going to have to replace your offensive coordinator. Who's that going to be?
Honestly, from I don't know enough about how everything goes down in the NFL, and what those conversations look like behind closed doors. I don't know if Dan Campbell's looking to go outside the organization or promote from within. The only thing I've heard is that it's going to be Scotty Montgomery, most likely, who's the assistant head coach right now, taking over play calling and the offensive coordinator. I don't know much about the guy, to be honest. I don't know many offensive coordinator candidates out there that I would really go after outside of Kellen Moore. I would love to see Kellen Moore, but that's just not going to happen. He's in Philly and he's not going anywhere. But I think with the way that the Lions are, and especially who Dan Campbell is, and who Brad Holmes is, I'm sure they'll make the right choice. Brad Holmes has made the right choice almost every time in personnel decisions that he's made as the GM of the Lions. So I have faith in him. But what it sounds like to me is it's going to be Scotty Montgomery, the current assistant head coach.
Here's one of my pet peeves right now, and this isn't in the notes. I was just kind of thinking about this as you were talking. I get upset, especially with my Cincinnati Bengals, when you've got the head coach being the head coach and the offensive coordinator, and you're trying to do all these different things, and you're trying to manage the game, and you're trying to do, it just becomes, I believe, it becomes too much at certain times, and you can see the deficiencies in doing that. But I'm going to ask you, what if they don't hire an offensive coordinator and Dan Campbell is the head coach and the offensive coordinator? Would you be all right with that?
I agree with you. I actually prefer when you do have a designated offensive coordinator, and I've actually heard most of the criticism that I hear of Dan Campbell is that he did have Ben Johnson calling plays, and he was just kind of the motivator. I think that's the best system. I think that there's a lot of other things other than motivation that a head coach has to deal with, and kind of manage throughout a football game. So I would really like them. I would really like to see them bring in an offensive coordinator. We just don't know what Dan Campbell would be like calling plays. He's never done it at the NFL level on offense. So I'd be interested to see. But I really like the separation between offensive coordinator and offensive play caller and head coach. I think you said it perfectly. There's too much else to deal with than calling plays, and you kind of get spread thin when you're doing both.
Let me give you another pet peeve while we're doing pet peeves here. I should have had some kind of soundbite for this or something. I didn't realize we were going to do it this way. It's just kind of an impromptu thing here. Now, this one's in the notes for you. The hiring process in the NFL just irks the snot out of me. So basically what the NFL is doing is you've got guys, especially like these, the Ben Johnsons of the world and things like that, who are being punished because they're doing so well. Because they're still preparing for games for the Detroit Lions, right? While they're trying to have Skype interviews and while they're trying to go see other teams. And they can't just be like, no, I don't want to do anything right at the moment, because then they're missing out on an opportunity to get more money and to advance in their professional careers. I don't like this whatsoever, and I think that the NFL should make the hiring process to where they don't talk to anybody, they don't do any interviews, they don't do anything like that until after the Super Bowl. Agree or disagree, man?
100% agree. I think this. I think now more than ever, this really, really bothers me. And now, I don't think that this happened for Ben Johnson. I don't put the Lions' loss on Ben Johnson. They still had over 500 yards of offense in that game and scored 31 points. Most times when your defense isn't a practice squad defense and you aren't giving up 600 yards from scrimmage in your game, that's going to be enough to win you, if not, be closer than 2 scores in the game. So I don't think this is true for Ben Johnson, but you can make the case that a lot of these guys, the last 2 weeks with the bye week for the Detroit, they should be focused only on their next opponent and not their next job,
Right.
and searching for their next opportunity, because you have to. I mean, you're between a rock and a hard place when you're in Ben Johnson's situation, where teams want you as their next head coach. You need to find a job for next season. And if you decline to be interviewed, or you say, hey, I'm going to wait until my team's done with the postseason, you could very well lose that job. And that Ben Johnson could end up not having head coaching offers because they sign elsewhere, or they, pursue other options because, if the Lions did go on a run to the Super Bowl, that's another month and a half that they have to wait to sign their head coach and to know who they're going to have going into next season. So, yeah, I completely agree. I don't think anyone should be able to talk or sign, head coaches or any contracts for the next season until after the Super Bowl is completed. So you don't have situations like this where your fans feel like, man, he's already halfway out the door. He doesn't even care that we just lost this heartbreaking game that we were, 2 score favorites in, because now he knew he was going to get the head coaching job somewhere else anyways.
Right. Okay. I mean, I think it's a good discussion to have. I hope the NFL looks at it and changes the rules. I'm not sure if they will or not, but I would like to see it change. It sounds like you would too, and I'd love to hear what the fans think. You can let us know there on the comments, or you can also go to our X/Twitter/Twix or whatever the heck it's called now, and you can do that for our main account at the 643 and out pod. And of course, Mitch, where can they get you at on yours again, buddy?
Yeah, you'll find me at Mitchellbrook52.
All right, excellent. So now we're going to get to our NFL Twitter poll question. Speaking of Twitter or X, whatever it's called now. And of course, here is our poll question. Let's put it on the board. Yes. Is the following a fair statement? The NFL wants the Chiefs to be the new Patriots. All right, Mitch, here we go. Is that a fair statement to say the NFL, not you, not me, not other fans, the NFL wants the Chiefs to be the new Patriots? I'll let you go, and then we'll look at it on our Twitter poll question, and then we'll give some results from each. Go ahead, buddy. Sorry.
Yeah, that's completely fair to say, and I think not only is it fair to say, it's obvious, and it's growing ever more obvious with each game that the Kansas City Chiefs play. I think the most obvious part is not that the Chiefs are the new Patriots, it's that the NFL wants them so badly to be the new Patriots. Never had I ever seen the Patriots win games or have people turn against them and despise them the way that I have for the Chiefs, and I'll tell you the number one reason why. It's because people despise the Patriots because of their excellence, and you can say the cheating, whatever the scandals, but there was never a doubt that the Patriots were a well-ran and well-coached and played well football team and dominated people. The Chiefs do not dominate people. They've been in countless one-score games that there's always some kind of refereeing controversy that gets them out of it, and the Chiefs end up winning the game. And I think that's why it's clear that the NFL wants them to be the Patriots or the new Patriots. They are not the Patriots. They're not, in my opinion, anywhere close to that greatness. And it's just clear that the NFL is trying to will them there with giving them as much help as they can.
Yeah, see, I'm going to boycott this game. I am not watching 1 minute of Taylor's team as you know, as they go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. It's painfully obvious. I really this has put a really bad taste in my mouth in the NFL for this season. There have been several things like you have said where it's just way too coincidental for me. I'm not a big coincidence guy. I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy either, but I'm really not a coincidence guy whatsoever.
Yep.
And I believe that this makes a lot of money for the NFL because it gives Stephen A. Smith something to shout and scream about every Monday morning, right? Not that I pay any attention to what he says either, but it fuels that fire. It gives us all something to talk about the next day,
Yep.
and because of that, it keeps the NFL relevant, and it allows them to make more money. So I really do. I think the NFL has chosen, kind of like the Yankees of Major League Baseball, right? Everybody, you either love them or hate them. And right,
Yep.
when the Patriots were in their glory, you had the same thing for them. You either loved them or hated them. And now they're doing the same thing with Taylor's team. Uh, it bothers me. But from a business standpoint, I can't really argue it. So I think that's one of the reasons why it bugs me so much, is because of that fact that I can't argue with it, because of the fact that the NFL is a business and they're just trying to find a way to make more money, and they're doing it at my expense, not at mine, because I'm not going to watch it. So that's the way I deal with it. I'm just like, nope, I understand what you guys are trying to do. You're not suckering me in, but I will have to say, and we'll have to talk about it, when they get to the Super Bowl. Am I going to watch the Super Bowl? Um, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. We'll have that discussion later on. That can be for another day. So here's the thing, Mitch, and I put some notes down for us all to look at. Right? I know that our fans can't see the notes, and that's kind of the whole reason for show notes, right? So that we can go through here and look all smart and everything. Not that you're not, because I know you will.
It helps to look at.
It does. It helps to look. That's true. It doesn't hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, is the hard salary cap working in the National Football League?
Uh, I think working is subjective. I think it's more of a deterrent. I think than anything. I think it works in the sense that we're not seeing teams like the Dodgers in the NFL. It doesn't help with the parity in the sport.
Be careful. Be careful.
I mean,
You don't think we've seen the same teams over and over? Don't make me, because I'll prove
well,
it to you.
see that's I'm talking the spending habits. We don't see teams. We don't see a spender like the Dodgers that we see in the NFL. There's nobody that's on that same level of any top free agent that's out there. They're going to go and snag up, and it's not even going to be a debate because they can pay them more.
Sure they are. The Mets.
Well, I'm saying in the NFL.
Okay, so you don't think the 49ers are spending a ton of money on just like 8 or 9 players, and then everybody else is fringe people? I mean, isn't that the way the Patriots built their dynasty? Was they went out and got a few really good players, and then Bill Belichick said, "Oh, I can coach anybody, right? Just give me a warm body, and I can have them block on on the interior line or whatever that would be, right?"
Yeah, there are big spenders, but I don't think it's the same level as the Dodgers. And I also think there's no parity in the NFL right now because it's just the Chiefs, but they're at least not the number one spender every year. And so I think that's why there are some restrictions, and I think that's why you could make the case that it's working. But it definitely still needs some work.
Let me make you the case that it's not working. All right. So here's the NFC Championship game teams the last 6 years. NFC: Packers, Niners, Bucks, Packers. Then they went to Niners, Rams, Niners, Eagles, Lions, Niners, and now this year, of course, Eagles and Commanders. But it's basically the same teams over and over and over again, right? The AFC is even worse because one side of that ledger is the same team over and over and over again, right? So it was Chiefs, Buffalo, Chiefs, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals, now Chiefs, Buffalo. It's not working, Mitch. It's not. We're supposed to have different teams in. Like Chicago is supposed to be able to rebound fast. They got the number one pick, and they suck. You know, the Jacksonville Jaguars have a really good quarterback that they paid tons of money to, and they can't hardly even make the playoffs. The Chargers are in the same boat. Um, the Browns, oh my God, what are the Browns doing? Right? But I do want to put this out there. Is that just mismanagement with the money? I mean, let's talk about that for a second. You have to, I don't care how much money you have, you still have to manage it well.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I think it is. I mean, the Chiefs don't have the highest payroll in the National Football League. It really comes down to the management of it. I mean, if we're talking the salary in the 2025 salary cap, the Saints have the highest payroll of anyone, and look at them.
Yeah.
The Browns are up there because of what they did with Deshaun Watson, but I mean,
Worst contract in the NFL.
yeah, in I mean, sure, you see some teams that are up there. I mean, but you see teams, the top five in salary cap right now are Saints, Browns, Seahawks, Dolphins, and Falcons. That's just screams mismanagement right there. The Chiefs are not even in the top 10. They're at 11th, right behind the Texans and Buccaneers. So
is that counting the money they're paying the referees or not?
no, yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
No, it doesn't, and that's why they don't have to keep the money on in the Chiefs jerseys. They got to keep them in the black and white.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's why it works. I mean, the Commanders, they have a lot of free agents coming up this season, so this isn't really super indicative of where they are right now. But at the end of this season, the Commanders are going to have the third most cap space of anyone, and they're in the NFC Championship game right now.
And they were and I don't mean to cut you off, even though I did, I guess. They were a mismanaged team until this year, right? They were the laughing stock of the NFL.
Yep, exactly. I mean, the 49ers, with how much money they spend on these receivers and running backs, because of Brock Purdy not having anything for his contract, they're in the bottom 10, 12 of cap space right now, going into the 2025 season. So it's
no wait. So you're saying they're in the bottom 12 as far as how much cap space they have left,
or top? I guess top. They have the 12th most cap space going into 2025.
Okay,
so. I think in those cases it works. It doesn't help the parity in the NFL. It hasn't helped the parity at all. Clearly, as we just saw. But I don't think that's really the salary cap that's helping or hurting it. I think it's just everything else that goes into it: the coaching, the talent, the having been there, the divisions. The quarterback play. It's a lot of other factors than the salary cap, I think.
Well, I think injuries play a big part into it too, because I think even your Detroit Lions would be probably still playing if they weren't so decimated with injuries. So
yeah,
so that plays a big part. How about this? I got two more note things here, and then we're going to jump into our college football countdown here. I think both leagues. And let me give you the so the ALCS 2020 was the Rays Astros, 21 was the Astros and Red Sox, 22 was the Astros and Yankees. You're going to see a pattern. 23 was the Rangers and Astros, and then finally the Astros got knocked out, didn't go to the championship game, and it was Yankees and Guardians. Now, as far as the NL, it was Dodgers Braves again, Phillies Padres, D-backs Phillies, Dodgers, and Mets. So on the National League side, you're getting some different teams in there. So here's what I would say, and I would love to get your comments and get our fans' comments as well, as we just keep adding people and adding people and adding people that are joining us. Thank you guys very much for doing so. I think they both need salary cap floors. MLB and the NFL should not necessarily, you can't go over this number, but what we need to do is say you must spend this number. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree, and especially for Major League Baseball. I think this has been a problem we've seen for a long time, and we've discussed it before. I think certain years, it's interesting to see the difference between the NFL and Major League Baseball in this sense, because there's not many teams in the NFL that are going to be cheap and phone it in and just be happy to be there every year after year. Sure, there's some years that they're going to take some years off and they're going to, kind of stack their pocketbook and rebuild before trying to make another push at things. But there's not teams like the Pirates and the Rays and all these other cheapskate teams that are just happy to be there in the league, not willing to spend any money and just skating by. You don't really see that in the NFL. It kind of seems more cyclical there, where they're going to spend money eventually, or they're just rebuilding right now, waiting to spend money in the right places. So that's why I think in Major League Baseball the floor is needed even more than the NFL. But I do think both leagues could benefit from it for sure.
And the other thing I'd like to see both leagues implement is, if you're not competitive for like X amount of years in a row, you need to have some kind of punishment. It's not just these owners sitting back and collecting money, and the fans of those teams being like, "Oh, well, next year. Oh, well, maybe next year. Next year we're gonna next." It's, as a fan base, it's really hard to continue to be next year over and over and over again. Okay, so
I think you got to keep it. I think you got to hit them where it hurts and start looking into that profit sharing when you're a bottom 3 to 5 team in the league every single year after year. Maybe once you hit that 4th, 5th year of being in that bottom 5, maybe you start losing out on some of the profit sharing, and that incentivizes people to put together a winning team like Miami and Pittsburgh would really probably get them out of there and probably increase their revenue, even though their revenue sharing would go down. You're going to get some livelihood, and you're going to get some more fans in the ballpark, and who knows, maybe even making a postseason appearance, and you get all that postseason money. So yeah, I think you're exactly right. There's got to be some kind of incentive or way to de-incentivize losing for these teams for that long, at least.
Right, and as much flack as Ken Kendrick gets here in Arizona, he's got the money.
Yeah.
And he's willing to spend the money. He's made a couple of mistakes, and his Madison Bumgarner was a bum, and but he's come right back, and now he signed Corbin Burns, and so he's not making a ton of money off the team. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's still making millions, all right. But some of these other teams are making millions upon millions upon millions.
Well, and it's nice to see, we need to see more of owners like that getting burned, like Ken Kendricks did with Madison Bumgarner. Not only to get burned there, but then to get burned with Jordan Montgomery, who can't throw a ball, really isn't a viable option, even starter anymore, and they're paying him $25 million a year still. And then to go out and say, you know what, though, I'll take my losses. I'm still going to go out and get one of the best pitchers in baseball, Corbin Burns, and pay him all this money. So, yeah, I wish we could see more of that. You're exactly right. It is refreshing to see some guys say, I might not make as much as some of these other guys phoning it in, but at least I'm going to stick up for my team and kind of build it to what they can.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to go with college football check down. All right, so we're going to talk about the college football playoff. We're going to talk about the Big Ten versus the SEC. We're going to do a little bit of a fun pick 'em as far as the college football game from last night goes. And then we're actually going to give a grade to how everything went this year with this new 12-team playoff. And then lastly, we are going to pick our teams, of course, in the NFL. And after all of that, just to give you guys a little bit of a preview of what's about to happen, I'll turn everything over to Mitch Middlebrook at the end because I know he wants to talk about a legend in Milwaukee, and we're going to let him do that. Hopefully he'll, I don't know, he might get a little emotional on us.
Oh, yeah.
You know all that works.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Mitch, we're back on here with you. Let's go with considering the Big Ten has back-to-back national champions and has a new, stronger realignment, can the SEC still claim to be the best conference in college football? Go.
No, I don't think they can. I think the Big Ten has claimed that crown this year, and no pun intended by a national championship. But I think, the college football playoff has really opened some eyes in comparing these two conferences. Big Ten held their own, and for all of the hypothetical matchups and all the things you hear about SEC teams and oh, well, it's a different brand of football. The Big Ten couldn't keep up with them or these offenses or whatever it may be. When they played on the field, the Big Ten showed them who's boss. And the SEC couldn't hang with the Big Ten this season. So at least for right now, I'm saying the Big Ten is better than the SEC.
Right, and it's not just Ohio State, right? It's Oregon, it's Penn State, it's Indiana. I mean, those four Big Ten teams were in the 12. And then, we had a couple ACC, we had a couple of SEC, we had, other divisions kind of sprinkled in there. So,
I mean, you see even Alabama struggling against Michigan this year. Michigan had a really below average year and below expectation year for them. And Alabama still barely beat them by one score late in the season. So I think that goes to show that, even the mid-level teams in the Big Ten, the top four in the SEC still have trouble playing them.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting shift. And it'll be interesting moving forward as well. And both of us agree. If you're going to tell me that I have to pick the best conference in college football right now, I'm going to pick the Big Ten. Mitch, are you going to pick the Big Ten?
Yeah, I am. And I think before this season and before we finally got to see some matchups of them, people would have called us crazy for saying that and that it's by far the SEC. But if you look at the games, you look at the tape, it's Big Ten.
People still might call us crazy, by the way. But hey, we at least going to have an opinion for our crazy selves, right? Let them. We don't care what they think of it. It's called the Sportz Truth for a reason. It's our truth.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So sticking with that for a moment, when the AP rankings come out for 2025 in their top 25 poll, is Ohio State automatically number one?
I think we've talked about this before when we first were starting in the college football season, and I think this is really interesting. I still don't know where I stand on this, really. I think this is one of the things that I am not really that opinionated on because I don't know which way I fall just yet. I think, you can't just say and base it on what a team did last season because, a team could lose all of their starters, half of their starters, whatever it may be, to either the NFL draft or the transfer portal. So it's hard to say, what they ended last season as they should stay as the next season. But I also don't know how you can drop teams down completely, if they're the defending national champions. So it's really hard to say, honestly. I do think, and I don't I'm not as in tune to college football as you or a lot of people are. So yeah, I think Ohio State does stay number one going into next season, barring that they don't lose, too many huge pieces or large pieces of their team. But I guess I don't know where I stand still.
Okay. I mean, I'm in a little bit of the same boat as you, but until the number one team gets beat, I think they're the number one team. So yes, I would put Ohio State right there. But if they lose, I wouldn't have any qualms about them falling pretty far if they do lose. Now,
So now, what if? Let me just see a scenario for
oh,
you.
devil's advocate's coming here with a big mustache. But go ahead, buddy.
Okay, so say they stay number one this season going into next season, and I don't know. I'm trying to look up here who they have scheduled in next season. Um,
Okay.
but week one is just against a stinker. Somebody not even in the top 50 in college football, and they beat them by a field goal.
Hmm.
Are they still the number one team?
Yes, because they haven't been beat yet.
See, I don't know. That one, I think I would probably say, they're well, if they can barely beat this team by 3, even though they didn't lose, it's pretty clear that there's better teams out there um, than them.
Okay, but when they lost to Michigan, there was a whole bunch of people, excuse me, who thought there were a bunch of better teams out there, and it ended up not necessarily being the case. So, I mean, I can see both ends of it. Even when they did lose, though, remember when they did lose and people were calling for Ryan Day's head, Vegas
Hmm.
was still saying, "Calm down, everybody, calm down. We still got them as the number one team to win it all," and they ended up doing that.
Yep.
I'd trade a national title and a trophy for a loss at Michigan every day of the week.
Yep. I agree. I think a lot of their fans may be crazy enough to not agree, but I would agree.
And sometimes you have to get beat, and you have to be humble, and then you come back stronger. And I really think that's what this team did. I kind of wanted to save this till next week. We'll talk about the religion and the faith part of their team. But I do I think they came back stronger. My other question for you here is: if Ohio State is number one, does that mean Notre Dame is automatically number two?
Yeah, I think if you're using that logic, they have to be. I think it kind of goes both ways, and I don't see a problem with that. I think they both earn that. If Ohio State earned it by being national championship, then I think Notre Dame earned it by making it to the national championship game. So
Right.
yeah, I think they do.
Okay. And then next week, ladies and gentlemen, myself, Mitch Middlebrook, we are going to rank the top 10. Now that everything is finished, I know Mitch will look at me and be like, I'm not a big college football guy like you are, but I'm giving you a week's notice tag on it. Do some research and rank the top 10, okay?
Deal.
Okay. Deal. Good. All right. Let's do our college football poll question. We'll put it on the board. Yes. Here it is. If you were drafting for your NFL team and you had to draft a player from the OSU versus Notre Dame college football national playoff, which player would you draft? Mitch, I'll let you go first.
Honestly, I'm taking Jeremiah Smith. That play to seal it. You really can't really quantify the clutch playability of somebody until you see it, and it happens on the biggest stage, on the biggest play in the game, debatably. Um, and I mean, outside of all that, Jeremiah Smith's a great receiver, has everything you're looking for, and to add that to it at only 19 years old, I think that's my my choice. I mean, that just blew me away. For him to come up that big in that big of a situation really impressed me. I think anybody would want that on their team because that's a winning play.
He was one of 6 players on the Ohio State team that had over 1,000 yards on the offensive side of the football. But he's just a freshman, Mitch. Are
Mm-hmm.
you really going to throw a young freshman kid into the NFL and expect there not to be some awful growing? I mean, are you going to waste your first round pick on him? I mean, I know I didn't actually put it in there that it was the first round pick, but I kind of assumed that everyone would think it was the first round pick. Are you really gonna waste that on a unproven freshman for one season?
Well, I don't know if it's now. I don't know if it's he's going into the draft now and I'm taking him. I just know he's one of the guys that stands out to me and like you said, 1,000-yard season and to come up that big in a game like that, it shows that he's ready for the biggest stage and to be able to make those clutch plays. And that really means something to me, especially going from college to the NFL. You need guys that the moment isn't too big for them. And he kind of proved that he's one of those guys. So that's why he's on my big board. I think he's young for a number 1 pick right now or your first round pick right now. It's a little early to say, but I think he just really stood out to me there in that national championship.
Okay. I'm a big Ohio State guy. You know this. A lot of our fans that have been watching the show know this. Obviously, my dog knows it as well. In the background there, as you heard her, it seems like she barks about this time every podcast. But man, I want Sawyer. I want Jack Sawyer. And I can't decide between him and Emeka Ibuka. Plus, I just like saying Ibuka. That's a great name. It's like the Japanese pitcher last week. I kept saying his name over and over again. It's Saki and Ibuka. There's great names to say. Well, we could have shots on all these. Every time the announcers say his name, you got to take a shot. I think we'd be pretty much plastered by the third quarter. So, I like both of those guys, and I tell you the guy that I would choose from Notre Dame. I'm going to kind of wrap this up. I want us to pick our football things, and then I want to give you some ample time at the end for your gentleman that you're going to do from Milwaukee here. I'm sure you've got something really nice prepared, and I want to make sure you have the time to do it, Mitch. So I'm going to choose Greathouse. He was the one that led Notre Dame back in that game. They scared me a little bit as they kept scoring and kept scoring. And I think going for that field goal and then dinking the field goal really put a damper on that comeback. Now, do I really think that Notre Dame had it in them to come back? Probably not. But I tell you what, they impressed me with the simple fact that they did not give up in that game. They just kept coming and kept coming. So that impressed me. I would look at maybe getting Greathouse from Notre Dame as well. I wanted to look at this real fast on our Twitter poll question because we had one of our guys here, Cowboy Reggie. Let me find where he commented. He was saying Benjamin Morrison, who's been injured since early in the season, is projected to go first round. I wish he could come back. He's a lockdown corner. Xavier Watts is one who played last night and will also be an NFL starter in his opinion. Thank you, Cowboy Reggie, for giving us that on our Twitter page at the 643 and out 5. For those of you who have all made comments to us today, we appreciate that. There's been multiple people do that here during the show. I see we've got a lot of stuff, a lot of notifications. Some people are messaging me on our Twitter feed as well. I'm not that good. I can't do all of this at once, so I'm letting that go, and I'll answer you guys' things here as soon as we get off the air. The last thing that I want to do here before we pick our NFL teams, Mitch, give me a grade for the college football 12-team playoff this season. Where would you put the grade at for them?
I kind of went back and forth on this a lot, and I thought back on the games, and the more I thought about it, I thought, there were a lot of uncompetitive games. There were a lot of games that I thought while I was watching, this isn't that great. It's not really living up to the hype, blah, blah, blah. And then when I thought back on it as a whole, I thought, man, going into it, I know Ohio State was kind of a dark horse team, and a lot of people had them winning it all. But a lot of people believed in a lot of different teams and for a lot of different reasons. And I think that makes the college football playoffs really fun because you could see a path for a lot of different teams. Maybe not every team in there, but a lot of different teams to go all the way and be the national champions. And because of that, because of the possibilities and because of the opportunity to win it all, I'm going to give it a B plus. I think it was almost as good as it could have went for the first season of a 12-team playoff. I think they got what they wanted. It wasn't, the top seeds winning every week and blowing out teams. It was mostly competitive. It was fun. It brought excitement to the sport, and I think it gave them a really good start to build off of. So I'm going to say B plus.
Okay. It's funny because I'm going to give it the exact same grade for a few different reasons. I like the home field thing in the very beginning. I really liked that. I thought that atmosphere to watch that game in was great. And you also got to realize, Mitch, and those of people who are watching us, they didn't have some of these big blue-blooded teams in this 12-team tournament this year. Yet it was still good. There was no Alabama in this, right? Tennessee barely squeaked in. You had an Indiana team that got into this. A couple of those teams didn't do really great showings, but they got a chance to be on national television, to be in this 12-team playoff, and then hopefully be able to turn this into a recruiting thing and be able to bring in more kids and make this a much better and much balanced college football field as a whole. So I love the last couple of weeks of it. I was afraid that the national championship game was going to be a blowout at first. Because I'm a Ohio State guy, I was almost wishing that it was going to be one. But it ended up being a really good game if you stuck with it. And I think that they couldn't really ask for a whole lot more, except for maybe more blue bloods and some better games in that first round. So because of that, I agree with you. B plus. That's what I'm going to give the grade for the college football 12-team playoff. All right, as far as our NFL picks go this year, I've got 25 points. Mitch has got 21 points. And we're not going to do 1 and 2 because poor Mitch would have no way of catching me. So that's just not a good climax for what we're doing here. So we're going to go a 5-point game and a 3-point game. So we're each going to pick one game winner that we think will give the 5 points and one game winner that we think will give the 3 points. So the first game of this weekend it's going to be the Chiefs, Taylor's team, and I'm not going to watch, against Buffalo. So it will be in Kansas City. Mitch, give us the money lines here and tell us where you would go before you and I pick where we're going to go.
Yeah, this is a tight one. The Chiefs are favored at minus 125. The Bills at plus 105. It's a 1.5-point spread. So pretty close there, but yeah, it's Chiefs, of course, at home favored over the Bills.
Would you put any money whatsoever on Buffalo in this?
I wouldn't. I don't think they're enough to overcome the at home and the refs that they're going to be fighting. It's going to be 2 against 1, so I wouldn't touch the plus 105. But I think it's just too much to overcome for not a big enough payout.
All right. So let's move on to the second game, the Eagles and the Commanders. Give us the lines and things on this one, buddy.
Yeah, Eagles pretty heavily favored at minus 285. Commanders at plus 230. It's a 6-point spread. Um, Honestly, I like the plus 230, that big plus for the Commanders. I think it's going to be a lot closer than Vegas thinks. With the way Jalen Hurts has been playing since that concussion, I do not believe in him at all. Now, Saquon makes up for a lot of that, and Jalen Hurts doesn't have to be even good. He just has to not turn the ball over, and they'll probably win the game. But I think, plus 230, those are still good odds for the Commanders. If they end up, getting to Jalen Hurts, they could pull it out.
So, I always ask you this because I don't understand these things, and then I don't know how much of our, I'm sure our audience is a lot more up to the gambling scene than what I am. So if I put $10 on the Commanders, what am I going to win if they win?
$23. So nothing crazy, but you double your money.
Yeah. I mean, if you put $50 on it, right now we're starting to get into some money, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. So it is that time, buddy. All right. I'm going to go first since I've got the lead. I'm going to tell you who my 5-point team is. It's probably going to be the same team that your 5-point team is going to be, and then we'll see what happens with the 3-point team here. So I'm going to go Kansas City because I don't think there's any way in the world that the NFL is going to let Buffalo win this game. What about you?
I got to do something big so I can come back. I'm putting my 5 points on the Bills.
Interesting.
It's the only way that I give myself a shot here.
Okay.
So I'm taking the Bills. I think the Bills can do it. They have to make it so bad for the Chiefs that it's not even close, that the refs can't even do anything about it. Who knows if they can? But that's their only chance. If it's a one-score game, there's no way they're going to win. But if they can just hang it on the Chiefs and do like they did in the regular season, they might be able to pull it out.
Okay. So my 3-point game might surprise you a little bit. I'm going with you and your odds. I do not like, I've said this the last couple of weeks, and the Eagles have made a fool of me. I've bet against them every week. And there's a few people at work who are big Eagles fans that keep letting me know that I bet against their team every week, and yet they still win. So I'm going to do it again. I'm actually going to take the Commanders for my 3-point game this week because I think the Commanders can do it. The moment does not seem too big for Mr. Daniels, and Jalen Hurts has looked awful. If they didn't have Saquon Barkley, they wouldn't. We just stopped talking about the Eagles 3 weeks ago. So I'm going to go with the Commanders. Mitch, what are you going to do?
Yeah, as much as I hope you're right, I am going to go with the Eagles, and it's just because of the Commanders' run defense. I think Saquon's just going to have a field day with them. Jahmyr Gibbs tore him up left and right, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do with a hobbled David Montgomery even at points. So I am going to go with the Eagles just because Saquon, I think, is going to be too much for him. But honestly, I hope you're right, and the Commanders end up winning.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make sure that you get your ending here. So I know that you want to talk about Bob Uecker, and I'll let you have the floor, buddy. Do what you need to do, and give us some really good things on what Bob Uecker meant to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll try not to make this too long or too emotional. I know that's going to be a little difficult for me because Bob Uecker is, I think, his nickname described him best. He really is Mr. Baseball to a lot of people, and me included. I think anybody that's been a Brewer fan the last 54 seasons, listening to Bob Uecker on the radio is able to agree with that and show the respect to a really great man, a really great broadcaster. And I think that's an important piece here. We didn't just lose the Brewers broadcaster. We lost a baseball icon and a representative of the great game that we love so much. Bob Uecker had over 100 appearances on Johnny Carson's show, and really made people, even that weren't baseball fans, laugh and enjoy the game that he not only played, but was able to be around his entire life. And back in his Hall of Fame broadcast, or his Hall of Fame induction, that he was obviously inducted for broadcasting, even though he said famously in his speech he thinks he should have went in as a player, a 200 hitter, a guy with 12 career home runs. You can't overstate the impact that Bob Uecker had, not only on the Milwaukee Brewers, but the city of Milwaukee as a whole. I grew up just south of Milwaukee in a small town called Racine, Wisconsin. And I can't tell you how many times I listened to Bob Uecker on the radio, even when watching the game on TV. Ever since MLB TV has been a thing, and you can get the league pass, I've never watched a game and not had Bob Uecker on the call. I'll always make the audio shift to Bob Uecker's radio call, even though Brian Anderson is one of the best announcers as well when he gets to call the Brewers games. Bob Uecker is the best. He's a pro. He's a pro's pro. And I don't think there's anything sweeter than hearing that get up, get out of here, gone. He truly knew how to call a game like nobody else. And it wasn't just calling the close games. It wasn't just calling the good games, the 1 or 2 score games. Bob Uecker really shined when it was the blowout games, the 9-0, the 6-0 in the second inning, when you know your team's out of it, and you're just listening to hear 2 hours of great stories from Bob Uecker. That's really where he shined. To kind of wrap things up, I'll share a somewhat personal story. I guess not personal, but personal to my family. When I was growing up, my mom was a flight attendant for Midwest Airlines, a really small charter airline out of the Midwest, and they were the charter airline for the Brewers and the Royals. So she got to fly a lot of Brewer charter flights around the Midwest, and I had to be somewhat close range. So, going to Seattle, St. Louis, St. Louis, Kansas City, Cincinnati, places like that. And, she built a relationship with Bob Uecker because that's who Bob was. He talked to anybody. Didn't matter if you were a janitor, didn't matter who you were. Bob Uecker would show you respect and have a relationship with you. And so eventually, they built a relationship enough to where my mom would tell Bob about my brother and I, and my brother being named James. Bob would always make it a point to ask, how are James and Mitchell? How are your 2 boys doing, to my mom? And so I never got to meet Bob Uecker, but he at least knew my name, and that's something that's really special to me. I think one of the best ways or descriptions that I heard over the last few weeks, kind of sharing stories with my other Brewer buddies and Brewer fans, is that Bob Uecker, to a lot of us, felt like our second grandpa. And that's, I think, exactly what Bob Uecker tried to be, and that he really was. Just an exceptional man. The Brewers lost a great icon, as well as the game of baseball. So really sad to see him go, but very thankful that not only as a Brewer fan, but as a baseball fan, we got 90 years of Bob Uecker. That's really special. You can't ask for more. And to say at the end of your life, you made it to 90, you were around baseball all 90 pretty much, I'll take that. I think any of us would. So
Right.
rest in peace to Bob Euchre. Um, and yeah, he will be greatly missed. The summers in Milwaukee will never be the same.
I like it. I like it a lot, buddy. I think you did a great job of that. I do want to give you a little bit of breaking news here from the NBA. We haven't really touched on the NBA a whole lot here for the past few weeks, but the Phoenix Suns are trading their 2031 unprotected first round pick to the Utah Jazz for three first round picks for them. So now they have three first round picks. Let me get a little bit more information on it here. So they're going to have a first round pick in 2025, one in 2027, and one in 2029. So are they gearing up to try to make a Jimmy Butler trade? That would be my question. So it should be interesting to see what they're going to do here. They may package one of those picks with Nurkic or one of those picks with something else, and maybe try to get some other pieces as well. But the Suns are making that move. It's already a done deal, from what I understand, what I'm reading here, and everything should be done here shortly. So I tell you what, Mitch, fantastic job, buddy. Thank you very much for the Bob Euchre thing. I really liked the other story that you told earlier in the podcast as well. For those of you who are just now joining us and you didn't hear the beginning part of it, go back, hit rewind, and start all over again. That was a good story there at the beginning by Mitch Moneybags Middlebrook as well. Well, I want to do something a little crazy. And I know, Mitch, that you're not going to be able. I don't know. I don't have this all quite down yet. So you're on the same mic as the music here. So I'll give you a second. Go ahead and tell us where to get everybody at. Give us that YouTube address and everything here, and then I'm going to play us out with, believe it or not, rock bag. Wait.
I like that. Yeah, it's a fitting note to the great Bob Euchre. But yeah, you'll find me on X at Mitchellbrook52. You'll find both of us and this podcast in its entirety at the 643 and Out Pod on YouTube. You can find us there, and also on Apple Podcasts. You can find us at We Like Sports on there. So the Sportz Truth. Feel free. Follow along with us wherever you can, and we will happily engage and make sure you enjoy it along the way.
Right, go over to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Turn on your notifications. That way, every time we post a new video up, which we're going to be doing a better job of here in the not so distant future of doing, you'll know when we put something out. So, Mitch, are you ready, buddy?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's do this real quick. I'm going to turn this down for a second. You won't be able to hear Mitch for a minute, and I apologize because I know he's the life blood of this show here. So, Mitch, we appreciate you and your mustache and your money. Okay, the money bags part of the Sportz Truth is Mitch Middlebrook here. Let's rock us out to the end. And as we always say, the only thing that is fair in life is a baseball hit between the third and the first base line. Listen to the bagpipes. Let it play a few minutes as we go off the air. Thank every one of you. Thank you, Mitch. See you later. thank all of you who've been watching the Sportz Truth with myself, the Cleat Geek Mike Valentine, and Mitch Moneybags Middlebrook. We'll be back next week, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, right here on the Sportz Truth. Good evening.